All right. So, welcome everybody. Today, I'm very pleased to have Rania join us today. Rania Waseef is going to talk to us about AI, conscience, data, all kinds of things. So, I'm really looking forward to that. Just some housekeeping. We're running the AI Business Catalyst program over the year. It'll be going for 20 weeks, and you'll see that our guests are streamed across all of the social media platforms. We are having a break mid-year, as I think it's well deserved. And so that will happen between July, and August. So just introducing my co-host today, Omar Gawad. Lovely working with Omar. He's got a great way with people. He is also responsible for all of these great questions that our guest speakers are asked. Omar is an architect. He's an analyst. He also runs the analyst architecture. He really looks at strategy. So he brings a lot to the table. So thank you, Omar, for bringing that. And then we have Alain Picard. Now, Alain he's a wonderful programmer. I say it in every session, really gets things going, but he's also the CTO of Aiden.ai. He's also the owner and founder of Iris Business Architect. So he's an architect, he's an enterprise architect, and a programmer. So brings great, and really with AI, really on top of many of these things. So if you have a question, it's good to ask Alain. And it's very helpful. Myself, I am Deirdre Kieran. I'm the co-founder of Aiden.ai as well. And I believe that artificial intelligence is definitely going to be changing the way that we learn, the way that we work, and the way that we do architecture. And so I think it's going to be something that we really need to understand and work through. I also own a company called Agora Insights that I've been running for over 8 years now. I think it's going to hit 9 soon. And I help learners from multiple countries, just under 100, get certified in architecture and analysis and now AI. But our guest speaker today, as mentioned, Rania is a specialist leader with over a decade experience in business transformations and centers of excellence. She's the founder and president of Vinova, a center of excellence. Rania leads the data governance and enterprise innovation team at Drivewise, ensuring compliance and fostering stakeholder relationships. Currently, she serves as the director of data professional development and certification of DAMA. So that's a body of knowledge, right?
Yes,
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And that's in Vancouver, Canada. An advocate for professional development, she also teaches data management and analytics while actively contributing to the community initiative. So it's wonderful to have you join us today. Thanks so much, Rania. Okay, so in today's session, episode 9 of our AI Business Catalyst program, Rania will be discussing building the foundation of trustworthy AI and data governance initiatives. So over to you, Omar.
Thank you, Deirdre, and thank you, Rania, for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have you today in this series. And welcome, everyone, to today's sessions. Let's kick off today's conversation with a common challenge that we have seen across many industries and across many organizations. As organizations are investing heavily now in AI transformations and embedding AI in every digital transformation strategy they have right now, yet very few of these organizations manage to scale or sustain the value that they initially hoped or they aimed for. In your view, Rania, what's behind this gap between the ambition and the result?
Thank you so much, Omar. So I'd like first to start by thanking Deirdre for the kind introduction and thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be with you today. And to answer your question, in my experience, the challenge usually is not due to the lack of ideas. Usually organizations, they have a lot of bold and promising ideas. The real issue is, in most cases, in having a shared vision and a clear structure to bring these ideas to life. So Innovation is in a lot of organizations is set up as a side project, something on the side, rather than something built into the day-to-day operation of the organization. That way, this actually, when you notice how organizations are managing this, you see this lots of scattered pilots. There's a lot of misalignment on the priorities. There isn't one platform that can help actually take all of this from strategy to execution. This is the gap actually that makes a lot of transformation, most of the organization lose this momentum. So what's needed, in my opinion, is a structured approach. We need a structured approach to take ideas from strategy to execution. And this framework needs to be aligned with, of course, the business strategy, and help aligns the teams and supports them through implementation and embeds innovation into how the organization truly operates. In my mind, if this structure is not there, then we don't have a solid foundation for innovation, and it becomes very difficult to scale any initiative into a meaningful and sustainable way.
Okay. So moving that idea forward, what type of organizational structures would we be looking for to help bridge this gap that we have between the ambition and the results?
That's an excellent question. And in one of the most effective ways I have seen organizations do this over the years, and this is even when I started thinking about my own business, it's around establishing a center of excellence. And when I say a center of excellence, I don't mean the ones that some organizations, they set it up for the sake of formality. No, it's, for me, a center of excellence is a platform for innovation. So when it is built with the right intention, a center of excellence actually becomes a safe space for teams across the organization to come together. Teams from business, from operational, from technical, they come together, they share their ideas, they help each other to move these ideas forward. They actually have a structure for decision making. All of this actually creates a structure when innovation is not just something encouraged, it's actually enabled, and making sure that everyone has the tools to innovate. There are a lot of ideas, great ideas in organization, but we don't have a structure and a framework to make sure that these ideas actually, the ones that of course are aligned with the business strategy, and this is something the Center of Excellence bring to the table, which makes sure that all of these great ideas are prioritized based on what is aligned with the business strategy. And to be honest with you, and you will see this is a main theme in the way I'm talking about either Innovaco, which is my company, or all my work. I believe that people are the heart of the organization. And if you really provide them with structure and tools that they need, they will thrive, and they want to be with you in this journey, right? It won't be something that you will be enforcing in them. They will be with you in the journey.
Just as a bit of a side question.
Sorry, yes, carry on.
I was going to say, as a bit of a side question, where does the Center of Excellence sit in terms of decision-making versus the people it represents and versus management?
Excellent. That's a great question. And this is why in Innovaco, we created a framework that we have this acronym IGNITE. And IGNITE simply starts, it's an acronym, right? That stands for initiate and govern, right? And we can go over the rest of the letters. But to answer your question, the govern piece is what I'm talking about. For decision-making, we create a framework for when we receive an idea, who will assess this idea? And of course, all of this has to be in a very dynamic and agile way, especially in today's world where we can't have a very systematic and rigid way. But how can we assess ideas? Who are the decision makers? How can we look at from different angles? Usually, the most effective way to set up a center of excellence is at an enterprise level. And it has a team, cross-functional team, and the governance usually goes, of course, there is a steering committee, usually from the executive team, but it's not in a bureaucratic way that has to have this all layers of approval.
Okay.
But it has defined decision-making paths.
Yeah.
That's great. I always like structure because I think it's important. And as you pointed out, it's not dogmatic, anything along those lines. But when we look at organizations, they often claim to be innovative, but what does this actually mean? And let's just bring in AI into this, because we've got structure, we've got AI, we've got lots of data that we need to work with. We've got complexity and so forth. So how would this innovation and AI-driven transformation align? What does that look like?
Excellent question. And in my current role, as you introduced me, I'm managing the enterprise innovation and data governance team. And I always have this conversation with everyone. What is innovation? What does it mean? So for me, innovation is not just adopting the latest technology or just using AI because it's trending. For me, the heart of innovation is to solve an actual problem, right? So to solve it in an innovative way that will actually provide value to other people and may improve how people work. This is the meaning of innovation. It doesn't, and in some cases, by the way, maybe you won't use technology at all. Maybe you can just streamline things that doesn't require automation or optimization. For me, the process always starts by asking the right questions. So when you ask the right question, what problem are we solving? What benefits from this? If we solve this, what benefits people are getting? How does it make things better for teams, for our customers, for our community? So asking these questions, right, this helps people to start innovating without being fixated on using a specific tool. So some of the most powerful innovation I have seen did not come actually from the executives. It came from the front lines, that people are actually working on the day-to-day work. They can see the challenges and they can express it in a way that we can see the benefit of what we are doing. And then when we understand the benefit and have a shared vision with everyone and make sure that we have a structured approach, you will see a huge difference in the way people are engaged in the projects. All my work as well is founded on change management. So I always bring people from the beginning. And so they are with us in the journey, because a lot of people would resist change, even if they see the value of it. But when you bring them from the beginning of the trip and they are with you during the journey, you will see different energy and momentum. And they will see how this improvement will actually change how the dynamics in all our work. And I would say this is an innovation, right? Because you actually took the time to understand what is the problem, make sure that you find what is the suitable solution. It could be an AI tool, it could be any way to automate or optimize anything, but at least you understand how it fits in the big picture.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's very interesting, to be honest, Rania. And I would say that the need for a structured and people-centric, I would say, transformation approach is where any transformation or innovation can thrive. So from your experience and from your perspective, you know that some AI and digital transformation initiatives struggle to sustain or to see the light, let's say. So from your experience, how we can make the AI transformation more people-centric and more structured in a way to achieve their, I would say, expected delivery or expected value?
Excellent question, Omar. And I work with a lot of organizations now to draft their AI strategy. And I always start by reflecting on the previous projects that I was part of it in different organizations and what I have seen exactly that describes the situation you are sharing with us, Omar, right now. And from what I have seen over the years, it's usually come to a lack of structure and follow through. We have all been there where lots of people are very excited about a new pilot project or a new tool, and there's a burst of excitement, but suddenly it starts fading. So what happened? So what happened is it's not because potential isn't there, but it's usually because there's no foundation. So people started either working in silos, they don't know who is responsible for what, there's a lack of ownership, nobody knows who owns what. And all of this creates chaos. And things eventually might stall, or it might go in a different direction, or people might take ownership of it in a way that might not be the best for the business. This gap, actually, to address this gap, as I referred to before, we started thinking about the framework, as I alluded to, which is the Ignite framework. So I said that's gap between strategy and execution. To address this gap, we created our framework called Ignite, and Ignite is an acronym that stands for I, which is initiate, G, which is governance, how to put the rules for decision making, and N is nurture, which is how can you nurture the capabilities, business capabilities, and different capabilities for your teams and resources. And I stands for implement, and T for tracking the progress of all the initiatives, and E is to evolve and make sure there is continuous improvement. So in general, this framework helps organizations move from inspiration to implementation, step by step. It creates the structure, roles, and accountability needed to not just launch ideas, but implement them, evolve them, and turn them into sustainable growth for the company.
So how would those center of excellence or other similar approaches serve as enabler for responsible transformation at scale, obviously, because we talked about the proof of concept, the silos, whatever, but I would assume that when we move to center of excellence, at least we're under the auspices of a more structured delivery model.
Exactly. So for me, center of excellence play a really critical role, especially in this area. When we think about organizations and how they are trying to scale responsibly, having a platform that can bring structure, strategy, and collaboration is a recipe for success. This is why I'm really passionate about this platform. What makes the Center of Excellence is so powerful that it creates space, as we talked about, for the teams to collaborate together. So we are bringing different perspectives, technical, business, operation, are bringing all of them to come together. You are bringing consistency to how decisions are made, which is something very important. We all have been there where there is an idea, but we don't know what are the right channels to get this idea moving. So by having the Center of Excellence, you have this structure and consistency. In addition to this as well, it ensures alignment with broader organizational values. So whatever initiative you are leading, you know how it fits into the big picture. And above all, it helps everyone to stay focused on the long-term outcomes. I'm sure we have all noticed this as well, that we see lots of projects, but we don't know how it fits in the bigger picture. And by time, sometimes people even lose track of what was the long-term outcome of this and just focus on what we need to do now. It's great to focus on what we need to do now, but it's important to have this vision of long-term outcomes that you are trying to achieve. This keeps all the organization together. And I believe in fast-moving spaces like AI, where the pace of change can be very overwhelming to a lot of people. We know lots of things happening in the AI space, but having the Center of Excellence is like an anchor that helps the teams to be agile, but at the same time feel grounded, that we still have structure, right? So for me, when I think about it, is by having this structure, which is the Ignite framework or any framework, it doesn't have, and I believe in simplicity. The more you complicate things, the more it is harder for people to follow. So we want a simple framework for people to follow. So by having a structure like this, transformation isn't just fast. It is thoughtful, it is intentional, and it is designed for a clear purpose. And having a clear purpose, this is one of the most important values we have that we always recommend as one of the main values for Center of Excellence.
And you talked about, and it's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking about in terms of the rapid pace of AI. And you were talking about long-term goals and outcomes. And I feel that very often there's a shift of the goals or those outcomes as things are moving so fast with AI that you tend to think that correctly or incorrectly, that those goals or outcomes should be adjusted very quickly as well. How do you marry those two different goals together or
That's
different
an
realities?
excellent question, because that's a really excellent question. And the reason I'm saying this, because a lot of people get into this loop, right? We need to move fast, we need to be agile, and we need to change and pivot sometimes. So it's okay to pivot in your technique and your short-term goals, but it is important to have a long-term goal that is aligned with the business strategy, right? And this is why what I'm talking about here right now for long-term outcomes, usually it is business outcomes, right? That may be related to the growth or revenue or customer relationship or whatever. It's more business focused. But the short-term outcomes that we are looking for might be technical outcomes, that we might change the approach. So a lot of teams, they would be focusing on the short-term ones, and sometimes they get overwhelmed because we change a lot. But this is why we remind them why we're doing this. Again, I'm borrowing this from Simon Sinek. I always start with why. And that's very important. And the why usually is anchored to the long-term plan, right? So the long-term strategy of the business. We are doing this to serve the strategy.
Yeah. It's just that the delivery of serving that strategy, you might get insight while you're working on it and while things are changing around you in the marketplace as well.
Exactly. And then we have to make sure we are moving, right? Moving quickly, because if you are not, then there's a risk. But we want to make sure we are doing it in a structured way, right? A structured way that doesn't impede creativity or anything like this. But at the same time, we have a long-term vision of why we're doing this, but the how is what's changing, right? We are changing our approach.
Yeah.
We might change some of the short-term outcomes, but not the long-term ones.
Not the why.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a good question.
It's similar to what we spoke to Tony about last week, actually, or the week before, when we were discussing that having an outcomes-driven model is really what you need because AI changes so much. And so I also want to talk to you a little bit about data, maybe just bring in some topics around agentic frameworks, because in a lot of the things that we do with transformation, in the future, we're going to be looking at how AI is also going to be bringing in agents and different things. So let's start off with just the data bit. Data, AI needs data, right? And without data, it can give you a lot, so it can give you outcomes, but that might not be sufficient. What do people need to understand as the connection between data quality, transformation, AI, and how do you connect that all together? And then we'll look at the agents, because agents also they're mimicking the roles of individuals. So how does that all work? How does that fit in?
Wow, that's an excellent question, Dimitri. And actually, this built on my experience in data analytics. I was managing the data intelligence group for a few years. And let's start with data quality first to answer the first part of your question. So data quality for a lot of business users, they think it is a technical detail that they don't have to worry a lot about it. But it's actually a foundational concept, right? Because we all know that you can have the best strategy, the most advanced AI tools, and the most comprehensive change management plan. But if the data is unreliable, the whole thing will fall apart. We know that poor data leads to poor decisions. However, with that said, a lot of organizations, unfortunately, they are not paying enough attention to the data quality. And we always say this, data quality starts from the business, right? The business defines what are the data quality metrics that we need to have in place. So I always say this, if we have poor quality data, and no matter what we do, you will see that the data is unreliable. We can't make any decisions. There are lots of delays. People have to do a lot of rework, and all of this will cause frustration. And more importantly, I believe that this will erode trust. And what I mean by this is people will not trust the data. They will not trust any insights, and they will not trust the transformation process at all because everything is wrong and they have to go and do it on their own. They won't trust any of whatever we will share with them. So for leaders, I always, when I work with executives, I say, you know what? We don't have to learn this the hard way. You don't have to wait until something breaks. Start with prioritizing the data quality projects first. This is very important. And you don't have to, as we say, boil the ocean. Start with the critical data. Customer data, product data, whatever you call critical data, start with making sure that you have data quality metrics for these ones, and make sure that the business units are sitting with you on the same table when you are defining this. It's not just data quality about the latency of the data or anything like this. We have to go higher level and make sure this actually serves the business. This data is suitable for the business. And I believe that is very important when we talk about data, that we want to make sure that that data is really high quality before we get involved in any of the transformation projects.
And so then the second, I agree with you on that. And actually, let me ask you a question around data. So data quality, how does architecture come into this? Because when you look at architecture, we create capabilities, we create value streams, we create conceptual data that helps frame what the business does. So when you talk about data quality, you also have more abstract data and data models and information concepts and all of those kind of things. So it's great to have quality data, and I agree with you 100%. People have to look at that because junk in, junk out concept. But how could we use some architecture to really help structure that as well and structure how that's looking?
That's an excellent question. And I would like actually to give you credit, Deirdre, on this. Because when I took your business architecture course a couple of years ago, this was amazing, a fantastic course that actually helped me to shift the way we map things in our organization. We had, of course, our data architecture team, where everything, we have our data models, our data architecture, which is great. But again, these are tools that is very hard to communicate with the business. So when I'm sitting with a business user and when I'm talking about data quality, it's very hard for them to understand these models, right? So what I actually learned from you in the course is now we have to differentiate between data and information, right? So think about information is data with context, right? Which is what the business users use. So I started creating information architecture, where whatever critical data we are looking at, I show the flow of this data across the systems. And then we start talking to the business users. For example, if we are talking, and I will be talking about this as well later on about different mapping for between systems, a lot of this, because this is part of my work, system integration. So when I do the information mapping, where we map, okay, what data needs to go to this system? And we don't use the word data, we use information. So we look, okay, customer information, what important customer information we need to go to the CRM system and maybe go to another customer success system after. So when we start having this conversation with this language with the business, they will say, okay, you know what? We want this business rule to be on this part of the customer data, right? We want, for example, the address to be whatever the rule, right, that we have. But we start having this rich conversations with them in a way that is aligned with their understanding. And because this is the data that they see in their systems, right? It's very important when you think about the concept of information architecture, having this conversation. And the most important thing is having a business glossary that include the definition of these terms. Very important, because we want to make sure we are speaking the same language. So this is something I started 4 years ago that we have to have before we do any project. We have to have a business glossary. Even all the reports, the dashboards that my team produces, we always have the same definitions that we used in these projects.
Hey, that's great. And this actually leads then to the agent, because when we look at an AI agents need to know what data to use, what prompting they need, will have to have the same language and those kind of things. And AI agents can actually also do stuff. So when you're looking at your center of excellence and you're looking at that, how much of the tasks would you outsource to AI? And so, obviously you're working with people, and I'm sure Omar's going to ask some people questions very soon, but there's also a component where there's a lot of the work that could be outsourced if you've got the right data, you've got the right information, you've got the right business concepts and context. So how would you bring that in? Where does that sit within the framework?
I love this question. And the reason I love it, and I'm actually working with a couple of organizations right now into how they can introduce the agentic AI right now in a safe way, right? The reason I love this because we talked about having people at the heart of as the heart of the organizations. And because I love people so much, I want these people to be focused on creative work. I don't want them to be doing mundane. I won't say mundane, but very maybe repetitive or work that takes energy from them that can be automated or taken care by an agentic tool. So this is where in the beginning, whenever we work on a project like that, of course, in the beginning, when we build a POC or MVP, minimum viable product or project, we first would like to have always a human in the loop, right? So to get the feedback, make sure everything is correct. And even after this, we always have to have audit process, right? To make sure whatever the output of the agents is actually correct. And usually we start internally. We never do this externally from the beginning. So it's never customer facing in the beginning. It has to be done first internally. We make sure that we provide a feedback loop. And then after this, even once it goes live and start being a service to our customers, then there's still a human in the loop to just audit and check and enrich the model. So actually, I believe in having agentic AI because it helps people to be more creative in their work.
Awesome. Great answers. Thank you, Rania.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. It is very interesting, to be honest. And by speaking about agents and building AI capabilities, I love this scenario and how we can start the agentic solutions internally first before getting into the customer-facing functions and so on and so forth. That speaking about data, speaking about information and whatever AI capabilities, agentic AI and so on and so forth, they are evolving very fast. So organizations, they are trying to keep the pace, but they are not. And honestly, we have the same situation. In this race, where is ethical considerations fall in? So we have leaders, they try to embed AI solutions, but they are facing the issues regarding ethical considerations, regarding the data, the information, how they are proactively going into AI and transformation program with maintaining the ethical considerations in place.
That's a really important question. And because of the pace of AI technology, especially AI is going really fast. And we all know policies are not because of various reasons. So we can't afford to think about ethics as an afterthought. No, ethics have to be embedded from the beginning. And by that, I mean, we need to start when we are planning for any transformation projects. We need to start by asking really deep questions. Questions like, who is impacted? So are we introducing bias in our work? What risks are we introducing? Do we have a solid plan to mitigate these risks? All of these are very important questions that we need to start thinking early on. And it's not just about bringing the IT and the data team. We want to make sure in these projects we are bringing different perspectives. We want to have legal with us. We have HR, marketing. By having different perspectives and on the ethical consideration on this project, you will see that in your organization, you'll have really rich conversations that will help you to make sure what you are implementing is ethical. And because ethics is not just, in my opinion, ethics is not just about compliance, but it's about being intentional. It's about designing systems that are fair, that are transparent, that are accountable, right? So you need all of these perspectives to make sure that what you are building is actually meeting this criteria. And at the end of the day, responsible transformation is about doing what's right, not what's possible. This is very important. A lot of people, once they see a new technology capability or any new tool, they jump on it. But we don't want this. We want you to think, are you going to do the right thing with this tool or no? This is very important. And when you get that part right, you don't just build better systems, you actually build trust in the organization because they feel, and even with your customers, they will trust you that you are always doing the right thing for them.
Love that. Thank you so much, Rania.
We talked about the center of excellence in a few different ways, but obviously we get to be honest. There's a lot of people who feel that this is a blocker. It's not lean enough. And that's why we see all those silos to start with that we talked about, because people feel they're more empowered and they're able to do things. And truly at the very beginning, that's often the case. They can do something, but to go from the proof of concept to reality, that usually is lacking many of the features. Really, I think this a real role for the center of excellence. But that being said, how can we reframe the governance so that people embrace those center of excellence?
That's a great question. And this perception is really common. And I get it. When people hear the word governance, they think of red tapes. They think of slowing things down. They think of added complexity. And I totally understand this. And I have been in the space of data governance for many years. And in reality, governance is actually when it is done right. And I will explain what I mean by done right in a minute. It's actually, when it is done right, it's actually what clears the path for progress, what makes things move fast. not by adding the red tape. And we'll talk about it in a minute here. At Innovaco, actually, because I have been looking for a partner on this to make sure, okay, what is the right model that will help us to embed data governance in a non-invasive way. And we are proud to be a certified implementation and training partner with Robert Seiner, who is the founder of the non-invasive data governance model. And what I love about his approach is it's really a non-invasive approach. And I have implemented it before, and through my work, I got to know him. He's really amazing. And he believed in the vision of Center of Excellence. And together, what we do is, or maybe let's talk about his framework, is that he defines the accountabilities based on the roles, the people roles, what they are actually doing, right? He formalizes what they are doing. So it is not something, an added responsibility in what they are doing. It's just formalizing accountability. And when we do it this way, people understand their ownership, their responsibility towards the data. And then this actually makes things move faster, because through their work and when they feel that they own something, right, and you are formalizing this, they are more open to work with you on how can we move things forward. And when we think about data governance should not interrupt your work. It shouldn't, it should support it, right? So this is why we always do this. It shouldn't be something that stops your work. It should be an enabler. So what I love, as I said, about Roberts is non-invasive, because it goes through in a very subtle, very, I would say, very quiet way in introducing the data governance. So it doesn't have all the structures that we are used to in terms of introducing data governance in a rigid way. No, it is very flexible and makes people feel that this is something done for their benefit. And that shift in how we are introducing data governance, that is more of an ownership and more accountability on the teams, rather than having a long chain of approvals and people are governing everything in a secure way that cannot be shared. Of course, we have, different levels of especially for sensitive data and all of this, but the way you are managing the governance is in a more structured way. What we always do is encourage people to adopt a non-invasive data governance that doesn't rock the boat, and that you don't have to do it for all your data. You can start with something small for your critical data and make sure to identify who are the owners of this data. If there's any new project or new initiative, who would be responsible for making decisions on this data, and who would be accountable for making sure if there's something wrong, they can, in data quality or anything like this, how would they actually report this, who would be responsible. So defining these roles are very important. And for us, we usually in Innovaco, when we apply this, we apply it early in the beginning, right? So make sure that we introduce this culture, which is very important, to introduce the culture and to encourage people to apply this.
But you mentioned a couple of times with the answer about data governance. Does it permeate and apply to other form of governance, like process change management or other aspect of transformation?
Because they are interconnected. That's an excellent question, because think about it, data is everywhere, right? So in all our work is based on data, whether we are working on a process improvement project, whether we are working on a new system, a new partnership, a new product, it's all related to data, right? And when we don't have clear ownership of who owns this part of data, it's very hard to make decisions. And other people who don't have the knowledge about the data, they will make decisions that might not be aligned with what we actually have. So by having the governance, and by governance here, I want to use a very simple word. Governance here is simply accountability and defining rules. So when you think about it from perspective, exactly, right? It's not scary, right? Because people, when they hear the word governance, it's scary because people say, oh, you know what? And people, they don't like to be audited. Like the main definition of data governance is the audit of the data management. If you look it out, you'll see a lot of people feel this. The technical and the business users, they hate it because nobody likes to feel that they are under a microscope, that your work will be audited and there's a report and the steering committee will see this report. This rigid structure is actually what created a bad reputation about governance. Governance is just for people who are from the business side and technical side to be accountable and responsible for the data. So whenever we have any type of project, we want to make sure who owns this data and understand it the best.
And I suppose that this exercise of defining those roles and responsibility also will uncover any gaps where basically falling between two chairs, as we say, in the sense that somebody thinks that somebody's responsible and vice versa, and it falls apart and somebody can get blamed, and basically avoiding that blame, at least if everybody has done their job, because at that point, those gaps have been uncovered from the beginning while you're doing early on in the process.
Exactly. That's actually what happens during this investigation, where there's lots of work that we do with the company, with organizations when we're working on this. But when we are identifying this, you will find lots of data that nobody is responsible for. And lots of data, even from a compliance perspective, that should have been purged from the system or should have been archived. Lots of things that's not happening because of a lack of ownership. And we identify all of this during this assessment.
Okay.
That's great. That's good. Because that's a real problem, isn't it? With all the shadowware, all of the different kinds of stuff that messes stuff up, or just the fact that it's old, it could mess some things up. But could you perhaps give us a sample of where it has been successful, where having good data governance has led to a good outcome?
Yeah, there are lots of examples. Let me see from where to start. So this is actually a good example because it's an application for both, for Center of Excellence and for data governance. And this was a project I was involved in many years, I'll say maybe almost 3 years ago now, where we had the customer success team and the marketing team. Both of them, they had great ideas for two systems that they wanted to implement with our CRM system, which is Customer Relationship Management System. And it was a great project. We were not involved. My team was not involved in it in the beginning, but they started the project and everyone was excited. But quickly, things started falling apart because they didn't understand how the data is flowing, who is responsible for each part of the data, what's the best way to have bi-directional sync between the systems. They didn't know all of this. And this was an expensive project. And this is where the executives decide to bring my team in. And right away, we applied when we jumped in. We were like a SWAT team that were focusing on this project for 2 years to bring it back to life because it was an expensive project with other consulting company. So what we did is we applied the Center of Excellence principles in terms of bringing the best practices, in terms of process documentation, identifying who would be impacted by the change, working on a change management plan, and all of this. But in addition to this, we applied the governance side of things, where we defined who are the owners, right? Who are the owners of this data? And we identified the gaps. Who is not owning anything? And, what's the gap here, right? So how can we make sure that we document how data is flowing across these systems? What are the best practices? What are the data quality for each of this critical data? So it was a great project because at the end of the day, it was a great experience for the teams to collaborate together. The project was back to track. We met the deadline, although after it was very stressful. But it was a great reminder that when you bring order to chaos, even if it's a chaotic project, but once you bring order and once you bring people into the vision, why we're doing this, and give them a structure and the reason why we're doing this, usually you can bring things back to track.
Great example. Thanks, Rania.
Thanks, dear.
Yeah, that's a great one, Ronia. And building up on that, if you are going to provide a piece of advice to the leaders out there from your experience on how they take their initiatives into a more structured, scalable approach towards innovation and AI transformation and data governance as well, where do they start?
Oh, that's a really good question. So when we think about it, usually what's important is the intention, right? So when I tell leaders about this, I tell them, okay, it's okay to start small, but the most important is to start with the right intention. Why are you doing this planning session about transformation? What's your intention? So when you start with the intention, you don't need to transform everything, right? You need to choose what exactly you need to improve in your business. And it's okay to start small and then grow after. So what matters most is laying the right foundation. definitely having a structure that can actually support the teams when they are with you in this journey. So having a clear intention and starting small and supporting your team, this is very important because this is what will give people confidence in whatever you are asking them to join you. And as I shared in the beginning, the structure doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be, as I said, people-centered, making sure that you are supporting them, you are there for them, and making sure that they have a say in what they will be sharing with you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Rania.
Thanks, Omar.
It's really been a good discussion today, and thank you. I really do appreciate your feedback. Any comments from my co-hosts, Alain?
I think I've been on a bit on both sides, and I remember what it was over 20 years ago now. I was at HP, and it's funny because they had a COE methodology that was rapid ignite in those days. And I was like, during ignite, I was like, okay, that reminds me of something.
Yeah.
We found as being on the delivery team, mainly, or the consulting team, but the delivery sort of bridging between the customers and the COE that was involved with those customers consultants. We found a lot of the holdback from customers, sometimes from us as well as consultants, trying to deliver in leveraging the Center of Excellence. And it took a while before we started to really, even ourselves as consultants, find the value when we go out to do a customer engagement to bring the Center of Excellence in a big organization like HP when you're delivering consulting. I can relate to a number of things here that we've covered, but it's also nice to see, I think, some evolution that has happened, the way that governance is much more streamlined and much more non-aggressive that you're talking about, because in those days, honestly, it was a bit on the heavy side. And even when people were seeing value, that was still one of the friction points, I would say.
Yeah. And to comment on this as well is we are creating a shift in how people think about Center of Excellence and data governance. Both of these are, if organizations adopted them before, it was mostly of formality or from a technical perspective. Our focus is, again, going back to people, focusing on people. How can we enable them with whatever tool that we have, right? Whether it is, again, by having governance, which is, again, just a structure of formality, of accountability and responsibility, or Center of Excellence, which will help them to create a structure and a platform for innovation for that. Yeah, unfortunately, most of the Center of Excellence I have seen, it was more established for formality, not to actually serve people and serve the business in an agile way.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 100%. And that's why I really appreciate how you mentioned that having a people-centric transformation is not a luxury anymore. And starting with a right intention, knowing what to do, not having to acquire all the new tools or all the new inventions. I think that this is crucial. Thanks so much, Rania, for your powerful way in delivering the messages.
Thank you so much, Omar. Really appreciate it.
I see that Andre has also left a note here to say, I really like the idea of framing data governance by aligning it to the roles of the individuals. Thank you. So thanks, Andre, for contributing there. All right, that's us for today. Thank you so much, Rania. From my perspective, it has been great hearing you link some of the structures, because I think that people, just as Alain alluded to, they think if you say structure, it means that there's going to be some policing around things, which is not true. And I think that having a good structure with AI is going to be even more important, because if we want to get agents and agentic approaches in place, you can't have rogue agents running around. That's not going to be very helpful at all. So I think start with the people and then work through with the applications and the solutions. It makes a lot of sense. So I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your view. Thank you very much.
It's an honor. Thank you. Here's the day. Thank you.